Welcome back to another episode of the One Tree Hill Rewatch here on the Filmaholic channel. I'm Matthew. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video at the end. Today we're going to be diving into two episodes. We're at the end of season 3 now, which I consider to be probably the best and definitely my favorite season of One Tree Hill. So the first episode we're going to talk about is 321 Over the Hills and Far Away. This episode originally aired April 26, 2006, and was directed by Thomas J. Wright and written by Mark Schwann. Mark definitely wrote a lot of episodes here at the end of the season, which makes sense. And I'll talk about this a little bit here in just a second, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of background here. So at this point, they definitely knew that the WB, as far as the channel, was done. And WB and UPN at the time were colliding into a new channel called the CW. And there wasn't a lot, but a few shows from WB were going to be able to make it over to the CW. They were going to carry over, and a lot of shows were getting canceled, or just coming to an end in general. And I'm not sure about UPN. I'm not really sure what shows carried over, but One Tree Hill, they weren't sure if it was coming back for a season 4, or if this would be the end, and it was only going to have 3 seasons of the show, which I can't imagine my life and just in general how it would have been if they'd only gotten 3 seasons. And I mean, I never would have been an extra on the show. I never would have filmed me. I wonder how things would have been differently. I'm glad that I didn't have to deal with that, but that was a thing. But in general, so when they wrote these episodes, and these episodes were filmed, they didn't know whether or not they were coming back for a season 4. So the series could have ended how it ends in the finale here, which would have been crazy. But they did. They ended up getting picked up for a season 4 by the CW, and they came back along with Smallville, Supernatural. I think those were the big ones that carried over into CW, and Seventh Heaven. But if I remember correctly, this year on the WB, they aired the 10th and final season. And they aired it like that. They promoted it like that, the 10th and final season of Seventh Heaven. But CW ended up, because the ratings were still so good of Seventh Heaven, I guess, they brought it back for a season 11. I'm pretty sure on the CW, which that was the end still after 11 seasons, so I don't even know why they brought it back. But they did. I know Seventh Heaven was on the CW for 1 year, I believe. But One Tree Hill, Supernatural, Smallville carried over onto the CW. Smallville carried over for a couple years. I'm not sure how long, but it wasn't too long. Smallville ended in I think 2011, I believe, and then One Tree Hill carried over. Then Supernatural, man, that show's still going. It's crazy. But yeah, so back to 321, this episode. I like how they structured it with Jake telling this fairy tale story to Jenny. Thought that was smart. It's also Jake's final episode on One Tree Hill, as well as Jenny's. And the conclusion of the Jayden storyline, because Peyton said in her sleep, even though she's going to Savannah to see Jake, asked him to marry her, all of this different stuff, wanting to move to Savannah to be with him. She said in her sleep that she was in love with Lucas, so Jake's like, you need to go back to Tree Hill and sort this out, and if you find out that you do still love me, then you can come back to Savannah. Like, I'll be here because I do love you, but you got to work through this. You got to figure it out, what is in your actual heart and what's happening. So that was heartbreaking, especially for Peyton dealing with that and trying to understand everything that's happening in her life while this story is being told, and her being the princess in the story, essentially, that Jake is telling. Like I mentioned in the last episode, Brooke continues to be weird around Cooper and that whole situation. But then they start building the Brooke and Rachel friendship in this episode. The seeds are planted in this episode for the Brooke and Rachel friendship, which takes us all the way through season 4. And obviously their friendship is a thing throughout a couple seasons. Even in season 5 and season 5, their friendship is still there to a degree. And then obviously we get to season 7 and that friendship is over. But yeah, that starts here. And while I don't mind their friendship that much in this season, and there's certain moments in the future that I don't mind their friendship, overall, I wasn't a big fan of their friendship and could have done without that. Really could have done without the character of Rachel for the most part overall. Her continuing to be upset over Cooper, which makes sense, like how she is and how he's treated her, especially sleeping with her again after he knew her age, which is not cool. But it's just, I don't care about the storyline too either. It's just like, can we get through these scenes kind of bits in this episode? And there's that scene with Deb too, where she goes to Trick looking for Cooper, which is interesting. Deb giving a lecture on like the age difference thing. I mean, Rachel's in high school, so that's like a whole separate thing. But it's interesting too, even looking at Rachel, in the future, who these characters get with. In season 6 and season 7. We'll talk about that later when we get there. Brooke and Haley fight in this episode over Brooke making her the dress, and just Brooke acting weird in general at this point, and them not writing her very well. I don't think at this point in the show how she gets so upset over Haley not liking the dress, and I can understand her getting upset, but the degree that she does was kind of ridiculous. Lucas comes back in this episode also with Karen, and you find out that Keith left him a lot of money to go to college, so he's able to go to wherever he wants for college, which is nice. And also kind of explores the ending of the Brucus relationship a little bit, starts coming in this episode. I think you kind of seen the groundwork, the seeds already, but definitely this episode is where it starts, because even though they're happy to see each other, she doesn't really miss him as much as, I feel like she should have, or that he probably should have missed her too, and, talked to her while he was away, because he tells her later he had a lot of stuff to deal with, but I mean, that's your girlfriend. You should probably be talking to her. But yeah, this episode's okay. I like that Haley invites Dan in this episode to the wedding. I thought that was nice. But overall, it's okay. We get to the next episode, which is 322, The Show Must Go On. This is one of my favorite episodes of the season, one of my favorite finales. It's a pretty great episode. It aired March 3rd, 2006, and it was written and directed by Mark Schwann. This is the first episode of the series that Mark actually decided to direct, and from this point forward, I think he directs all of the finales. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he directs all the finales and a lot of big episodes throughout the show, but definitely the finales. And it was the final episode, like I said, on the WB. So a lot of this could have been the end of the show, which is crazy because of all the cliffhangers. And I know that they shot, or at least I don't know this, but I'm pretty sure they shot alternate endings. I remember reading about it, and they shot alternate endings. And I even remember rumored what those scenes were, some of them. I remember some. Obviously, the episode ends with the fact that 2 people are pregnant. One is Karen, who Karen reveals that to Dan first. And there's a lot of stuff with Dan in this episode is good. But there's stuff with him and Karen. There's a scene where he comes and this is after Deb's told him the truth. But he goes to Karen and he tries to talk to her. And she ends up revealing that she's pregnant. And then obviously her and Lucas, she has that reveal to Lucas later in the episode too, where he finds the pregnancy test, but it's not her bag. So that reveals that someone else is pregnant. And that's one of the cliffhangers of the episode is, who is pregnant? Is it Brooke? Is it Haley? Or is it Rachel? All 3 of those are in question of being pregnant at the end of this episode, and they all kind of have reason to believe that it's one of them. And obviously we know who it is when we get to that point. One of the alternate endings that they filmed, or at least rumored they filmed, was Brooke actually being the one that was pregnant, which we know we're moving into season 4. If you've rewatched the show, hopefully you have. You're rewatching it, you've already seen it once. Brooke is not the one that's pregnant. It ends up being Haley. But the reveal in the first episode of season 4 is that Haley is going to Stanford, or she got accepted to Stanford, and Rachel says that she's pregnant, but obviously she's lying. But that was the rumor, was that there was an alternate ending filmed where Brooke tells Lucas that she's pregnant, and that was the way that the show. If the show hadn't got picked up by the CW, which I don't know if they just made the clear, if they had actually knew when the finale aired that it was going to get picked up, or if they just made the decision to just wing it, and if it ended like this, it ended like this. But I'm pretty sure they filmed a scene where Brooke was pregnant, and that was how the show was going to end, with Brucus being together and having a kid. But obviously you have the stuff with Rachel and Cooper in this episode, the scene at the reception, and then the limousine being stolen, which is such an iconic thing. The bridge scene with the limo going off the bridge and Led Zeppelin playing. This at the time was the only other show that had been allowed to play Led Zeppelin when this episode aired was The Sopranos. So One Tree Hill was the second show other than Sopranos that Led Zeppelin let play their music, and I think that was really cool, and I thought it was beautiful in the show, and it was awesome. Like I said, there's the pregnant cliffhanger as well. Karen's pregnant. There's the Dan and Deb stuff in this episode. Obviously, let's go back to the beginning too. So the first Dan and Deb scene we have is at the graveyard, where Dan's paying his respects to Keith, and then Deb comes up, and Dan's like, Keith isn't the hero that everyone thinks he is. He tried to kill me. So this upsets Deb, and she even has a conversation with Karen about it, but Karen's like, it's not fair to Keith, his memory, but Keith is dead, and Dan's need for revenge is buried with his brother. But Deb doesn't feel okay with it, and feels like she needs to go and tell Dan the truth, which she does in this shocking scene. Like I was telling Sarah, I was like, it's just such a... You can feel that scene when she tells him that, because you can't imagine, first of all, you can't imagine killing your brother, but having done all that and had this belief in your mind and your justification behind it, and then you get to the point where, no, none of that's true. This person actually tried to kill me. This other betrayal here. And it's such a shocking moment for him, and it shows him breaking down in the graveyard, which is great. That scene could have been shot better, and I blame that on Mark because he was directing this. Paul, his acting is really good in that scene, and I love him falling to his knees and crying, but they should have had him crying longer into his hands. It bothers me every time because it shows him crying into his hands, and then he drops his hands, but there's no tears, and it's just him looking at the grave. That should have been shot a little bit differently, so I'm surprised that was kept in there. That was the only little dance scene that bothers me. I'm like, it should have been. The directing was bad in that moment. And I'm really surprised. Obviously, Mark's been around all these 3 seasons and been watching people direct, but he hasn't directed one personally himself. I'm surprised he didn't direct a smaller episode to be his first episode, because this was a lot of action in this episode. As far it's not just the finale, but the bridge going off, the limo going off the bridge and all that. That's huge stunts for the show that they haven't done in any of the seasons before. This was the biggest, definitely the budget. The budget was the biggest in this episode than it had been in the whole show. I think there was 2 limos, one they actually were driving and one that was cleared of all oils and everything, and that's the one they drove. That's when they had to go off the bridge. The one that actually worked, that you could drive, as long as the show went on at Screen Gems, they actually had that limo parked out front. So if you watched my One Tree Hill tour around Wilmington that I did with Sarah, we went to Screen Gems, and I pointed out the area where they kept the cars and everything while the show was going on. I remember that there used to be limos out, the limo out there along with all the other cars. Actually, I'm thinking I have pictures of that, and when we get to season 5 or season 6, I have a bunch of pictures from my time in Wilmington and stuff while they were filming that I'm going to be doing videos of and showing you guys just my behind the scenes experience in the show. But I don't want to do that yet because I want it to be actually what point the show was at when I actually went there. So even if with the limo and stuff, I'll show it on those videos when we get to it. Trying to think what else. You have the Brooke and Lucas stuff in this episode. Brooke the kind of suspense that she could be pregnant, their relationship, her being upset because at the end of the last episode, Peyton revealed to her that she still had feelings for Lucas. So Brooke is pissed, and some of the best, one of the best like little performances from little bits of the show, as far as performance-wise from Sophia, I love in this moment where at the beginning of the episode she comes and confronts Peyton in her bedroom, and he's on the damn door, and she like hits the door, and you can hear it echo in the studio, which some people might have a problem with that because like you can tell that there's an echo and there wouldn't really be an echo in her room. But for me, I love it so much because it just like that performance, and it's like I'm glad that I would have rather you kept that taken there with that echo and had that great of a performance from Sophia than you cut it and redo it and to not be as raw and great. So I love that great performance from her and Hillary Burton, who I think should have won an Emmy for this season in general. But great, and then you have their friendship is shattered again for at least a whole nother season in this episode. And while they become friends again after this, definitely was a changer for them, I feel like. And still in their friendship, even moving forward, I feel like this is definitely a changer, this episode. And then her and Lucas, and then Lucas flipping about the kiss, and then their fight, and you really kind of getting the sense that their relationship is probably coming to an end soon. That and the behind-the-scenes stuff with those two actors. And then you have the Peyton and Lucas stuff too. Her keeping it a secret, her feelings for him, and just her performance in doing that. What else here? And obviously, Nathan and Haley renew their vows and get remarried in this episode. And there's a lot of their stuff's really sweet. The episode opens with Nathan having this vision, right? And he has a vision of the crash, which is a little bit weird. And as we move into season 4, we know that Keith, not necessarily he's not the one that pulled Nathan out of the car. Nathan actually did that himself and saved them. But Keith was there and sort of helped Nathan, giving him, I guess, the strength to pull them out and the motivation to do so. So it makes me wonder a little bit, did Keith give him that vision at the beginning of the finale here, that the crash was going to happen? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that he probably did, because otherwise it doesn't make sense for Nathan to have just like that bad dream that this was going to happen, and then it actually does. So I'm going to say that Keith probably was in Nathan's mind a little bit about like, hey, look out. A little bit of a warning. But yeah, I love the music in this episode, not just the Led Zeppelin song, the song by Augustana, the Boston song. I remember the time too, a little behind the scenes thing. For Nathan and Haley's first dance at the wedding, they actually let the audience vote on what that song was going to be. They put out a poll and you like called in a number and voted. And I remember the options were the one that actually got chosen, which was More Than Anyone by Gavin DeGraw. It was Lie in the Sound was another one which we heard in season 2. And then I can't remember what the other song was, but there were 3 different options, and I can't remember what the other one was. I know I didn't vote for Lie in the Sound, so I'm thinking I voted for the one that actually won, the Gavin DeGraw one, but I would have to know what that other song was to fully remember. But yeah, I know you got to vote on that, which was gimmicky at the time, I guess, looking back, but I liked it. It was fun as an audience member. I feel like, with TV and stuff, this is an experience that I had watching One Tree Hill on TV. That's gone. You don't really have that anymore. And I'm not dissing on anything we have now as far as like streaming services or anything like that, because it gives us so much more opportunity for stories. When I want to, there's several shows that I personally want to make in my life and have out there, and I'm not against having them on TV, but you have so many more options, I feel like, with streaming services, both to get that show made, more opportunity to get it made, but also what you can tell in a streaming service is far more freedom. You have more freedom in doing so than on TV. Because I mean, honestly, like One Tree Hill probably wouldn't have went on as long if it was like, say, on Netflix. It probably wouldn't have went on for 9 years. But I do imagine, if Netflix, if that stuff had been around and One Tree Hill had been on Netflix, say, what would have been different about it? Would it have been some scenes more grounded? Not, I'd say One Tree Hill wasn't grounded. Not, I guess, just more raw. I guess in some instances, and because with stuff on like say the CW or whatever, and you have to watch out for drug use. You have to watch out for cussing, sex scenes probably, like this extent of the story that you can tell in the freedom, which isn't bad for certain things, but I'm just curious what the show would have been like if it had been on a different service. But yeah, in general, probably definitely one of my favorite scenes of the high school years, and it might make it into my top scenes, or not scenes, episodes of the show in general when we get to the end of the show. It was a really good episode. I think Mark did do a good job overall with his first episode directing. But I'm glad that the series didn't end with this. I'm glad we got more. And I can't like end this episode without talking about the cliffhanger with Dan. I remember before this episode aired, being on the forums and everything, one of the things that came out, or I think it might have been an interview, was something going to happen to Dan? Was he going to be tried to be killed again at the end of the season? Because we got season 1, he had a heart attack. Season 2, the dealership fire, and the only answer we got was no, it was going to be worse. And the worst is that he walks into the beach house at the end of the episode, and someone has went into his house and painted murderer in red paint on his white wall. So someone knows that he killed Keith, and that was the cliffhanger for his character in the season, and it was also a big cliffhanger for the show in general. So you had the fact that someone knows that Dan killed Keith, you have the pregnancy storyline, and you have the dilemma going off the bridge. And not only did the dilemma go off the bridge with Cooper and Rachel, who are now underwater and unconscious, you also had Nathan jumping in to save them and getting stuck in the limo as well. So you had 3 lives hanging in the balance. And I love Haley screaming on the bridge and how it ends with her screaming for Nathan, and it cuts to black, or not cuts to black, it shows the bracelet before it cuts to black. And I thought all that was great. It also connects going back to not just their history with the bracelet, but also goes back to the beginning of the episode when he had that vision. Now, one little thing too about this crash and the way it was shot. In real life, Nathan wouldn't have jumped in like he did, because he jumps in heroically and it's a good shot, but the way he jumps in, he probably would have hit the car and got knocked out instantly, if not killed, broken his neck. But they talked about it on the commentary of how they knew it was unbelievable the way he jumped. He would have jumped more like Lucas jumps in the next episode. But they wanted that shot. They wanted it to look like that, so they didn't really care. They took the belief aspect out of that one shot so they could get that good iconic shot of him jumping in, which they do. And another thing too is they obviously have a tank in a soundstage at Screen Gems, where they filmed this stuff with the limo being underwater. They'd actually film it in a river. They filmed this underwater scenes on a tank. So when they filmed it on the tank, everything is right side up. So like the car's under the water, so they're sitting there like I'm sitting right now. And when Nathan tries to get in the window, he's like right here at the window looking into the car at them sitting right here. Realistically, the limo is upside down, so they should be like, it should have been filmed differently, and he would have been coming to the window and it would have looked differently. So there's a little bit of continuity error there with how they filmed that underwater scenes, and I'm not sure how more. I'm assuming it would have been, the reason they filmed it like this was for the actors playing Cooper and Rachel, and it would have been probably impossible to film them actually underwater upside down. I'm not really sure, but I'm assuming that was probably the big issue there of why they filmed it like that, and it was probably just easier to film, and they thought people wouldn't notice. But you have people like me doing YouTube videos on it and rewatching it like 10 million times that it's gonna bother me a little bit. I wish they had somehow. I even think you could have filmed it and then like flipped it. I don't know, but it kind of bothers me. But just the realistic bit of that. But it's such a great scene with the music playing, the emotions, all that, that it makes up for it. It makes it one of the best episodes of One Tree Hill, I think, so far. So that's the end of season 3. We're at the end of season 3 now. Go back, check out the other videos. You haven't watched all of those. Check out the One Tree Hill tour video that I did in Wilmington. And we'll have season 4 coming up for you soon. Thanks, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.